Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell. You know the drill. Today, we're going deep on a topic that's super relevant, whether you're a UPSC aspirant or, frankly, just navigating life. Ethics.
It's a big one.
It is. Often you'll see it described as ethics, values, morality, and societal harmony, which can sound a little intimidating.
Definitely.
But that's why we're here to break it down. We've got a ton of source material, and we'll pull out the most important insights to help you really grasp this, whether you're prepping for exams or just trying to make sense of the world.
I think that's key in making it relevant because ethics can seem so abstract.
Totally. So right off the bat, our sources are very clear. Ethics is not just about blindly following rules or religious doctrines. It's about the why, the deeper principles behind what we consider right and wrong, especially when things get murky.
And what's so interesting is how ethics evolves. Our sources highlight this, how something like slavery was once accepted, but now is universally condemned.
Right, like societal values can totally shift over time. It's dynamic. Okay, but why should we even care? It's not just some abstract thing, right? Our sources emphasize that ethics has real consequences.
Exactly. They point to individual benefits like happiness, a more positive outlook, even credibility, stuff we all want. But it goes way beyond that. Think about peace, good governance, justice. Those are built on ethical behavior.
And that ties in perfectly with the whole UPSC focus, right? Creating a better India.
Yeah.
But our sources don't just tell us why it matters. They give these vivid examples.
Well, yeah, some scary ones too.
Right. They talk about ethical erosion in everyday life, things like jumping red lights or petty crimes.
Which might seem small, but
But they add up. When everyone does it, it creates bigger issues, corruption, lack of trust, the whole thing.
like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there are inspiring examples. Our sources tell the story of Ruxana Kausar, the young woman who fought off a terrorist, won a bravery award.
So much courage, the kind of integrity UPSC really values.
Totally. Okay, so we know ethics is important, but how do we even understand it? Our sources break it down into these core components: choices, actions, and behavior.
It all starts with our choices, driven by, what we prefer, what we prioritize.
Those manifest as actions, the things we actually do.
Right. And over time, those actions create patterns of behavior that show our ethical leanings.
So it's not just one thing, it's the whole picture.
Exactly. And understanding this is crucial for analyzing case studies, which is huge E in Ethics GS4.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, our sources also point out that to really grasp ethics, you got to understand different cultures. They specifically talk about individualistic cultures, like in the West, versus more universalistic ones, like in India.
It's a key difference. Like the West emphasizes personal freedom, achievement, while in India, there's more focus on harmony, duty, the group as a whole.
And they give some classic Indian values: tolerance, Atithi Devo Bhava, that whole guest is God thing, and harmony with nature.
Deeply rooted in our traditions.
Absolutely. But understanding this isn't about saying one culture's better. It's about having a nuanced perspective, which is vital for UPSC and, well, for life.
For sure.
Now, our sources also get into values, which they describe as like a compass guiding our actions. They make a distinction between core values and peripheral values.
So core values are those fundamental things: honesty, compassion, the stuff that makes you, you, and it stays pretty constant. Peripheral values are more fluid, can change based on experience, social norms, that kind of thing.
So our core values are like the bedrock, and peripheral values are more adaptable.
Exactly. And then there's the difference between personal values, what matters to you individually, and social values like equality, justice, things focused on the bigger picture.
And for someone aiming for UPSC, being able to balance those is huge.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing your own aspirations while understanding what society needs. Ethical leadership in action right there.
Totally. Okay, let's get into how we analyze ethical issues. Our sources present different approaches, which are super important for those UPSC case studies and essays.
They start with the utilitarian approach, which is all about the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
So very practical, outcomes focused.
Exactly. Like maximizing benefits, minimizing harm. It's often used in policymaking.
But I could see that getting tricky if individual rights clash with what the majority wants.
Oh, for sure. And that's why they also present the rights approach. This one focuses on upholding individual rights and dignity. Think fundamental rights, the Indian Constitution, all that.
So ensuring everyone is treated fairly, regardless of what might happen to the group as a whole.
Exactly. And they don't stop there. They go on to the justice approach, all about fairness and equal treatment. super relevant to social justice issues, which are, of course, huge in the UPSC syllabus.
It's about making sure everyone has the same opportunities,
Yeah.
right? No one's disadvantaged.
Exactly. Leveling the playing field. Then there's the common good approach, which is more holistic. It's about the well-being of society as a whole.
We're all connected, our actions affect everyone, that kind of thinking.
Absolutely. It's thinking beyond just yourself and considering the collective good. And finally, they talk about the virtue approach, which focuses on developing good character traits, honesty, courage, compassion, all that.
This one resonates with me. It's not just knowing the rules, it's about being a good person, naturally making good choices.
Right. It's about who you are, not just what you do. And here's the thing. The sources emphasize there's no single right approach.
So no magic formula.
Nope. The key is being able to analyze things from multiple perspectives. It's about having a full toolkit so you can approach tough situations with nuance, really understanding all the factors involved.
Which is exactly what the UPSC exam is all about, right? It's not just memorizing stuff. It's about critical thinking, problem solving, applying ethical principles to real-world scenarios.
Exactly. And that's where the real learning begins. It's not about easy answers. It's about thoughtful deliberation, weighing different views, and ultimately making choices that reflect your understanding of ethics and your commitment to the greater good. Speaking of real-world scenarios, our sources get into a tricky area, the whole personal versus professional ethics thing.
Yeah, that's where things can get messy, right? Like when your own beliefs clash with what's expected at work.
Exactly. Our sources define professional ethics as that code of conduct, what's imposed by a company or a profession, basically how you're supposed to behave.
So things like integrity, being on time, confidentiality, all that falls under professional ethics.
Right. And those often overlap with personal ethics, the values that guide us in our personal lives. Kindness, honesty, empathy, that sort of thing.
But sometimes they clash, don't they? Imagine a doctor who personally opposes abortion, but works at a hospital where it's performed. That's got to create some conflict.
And that's why our sources emphasize understanding why these realms are separate. In a professional setting, we're bound by specific codes, sometimes even legal stuff, that doesn't apply to our personal lives.
Different hats for different roles, kind of. And for someone aiming for public service, this is huge EE.
Absolutely. As a public servant, you have so much responsibility impacting so many lives. Ethical conduct, both personally and professionally, is crucial for building trust, ensuring good governance.
It's like your actions reflect not just on you, but on the whole institution you represent. But it's not about being totally different people, right? Our sources point out that some values like honesty, accountability, compassion, those are essential in both personal and professional ethics.
It's finding that common ground, those core values that guide you to act with integrity no matter where you are.
Okay, so we've explored how ethics works within ourselves in different roles. But what about our relationships? Our sources make this distinction between ethics and private versus public relationships.
Yeah, this is interesting. Private relationships with family, friends, they're built on emotions, shared history, lots of personal baggage. Public relationships are more formal, governed by societal norms. Often there are actual rules.
So like if I disagree with my sibling, I might yell, slam a door, then make up over pizza later. Hopefully you wouldn't do that with a government official.
Exactly. Our sources highlight that in private, we often prioritize loyalty, the well-being of our loved ones, even if we bend the rules a bit. But in public, things like impartiality, fairness, transparency, those become paramount. Can't play favorites just because you know someone.
It's recognizing that in public roles, you have a duty to act in a way that benefits everyone, not just your inner circle. Requires a certain detachment, right?
Yeah.
Not letting personal feelings cloud your judgment.
Exactly that. And speaking of public roles, our sources get into public service and administrative ethics, which of course is super relevant for UPSC aspirants.
Okay, let's unpack that. When we think of ethical governance, what are the core principles?
Well, integrity is at the forefront. Honesty, transparency, accountability. Public officials have so much power it has to be exercised ethically. Our sources also highlight strict adherence to those codes of conduct, respecting rules and regulations, not just by the letter, but the spirit.
It's about serving the people, not yourself. And it's not just avoiding wrongdoing, it's actively working for the people's welfare.
Right. Our sources stress empathy and compassion, especially toward the most vulnerable. Non-discrimination is key, too, treating everyone fairly no matter their background.
Sounds like a tall order. But it's what we need from our public servants, right? That commitment to ethical, effective governance.
It is, and our sources remind us that while personal morality is a base, ethics in public life demands a broader view. Putting the welfare of society above your personal beliefs or loyalties. They even point out that personal emotions, if they influence decisions, can have really bad consequences.
It's that whole power corrupts thing, right?
Yeah.
Without a strong ethical framework, it's easy to slip from serving the people to serving yourself.
Yeah.
That's why checks and balances are so important.
Exactly. Our sources highlight mechanisms like having those codified ethical norms, requiring officials to disclose conflicts of interest, having ways to actually enforce those codes of conduct. It's about having a system that encourages ethical behavior, but also has safeguards for when people are tempted to abuse their power.
It's not just hoping people will be good, it's building a structure that promotes good governance. Now, beyond those frameworks, our sources give us examples of inspiring figures, great leaders, administrators, reformers who really embodied ethical conduct.
Oh, yeah. Those who not only achieved great things, but did it with integrity, a commitment to serving others. Like Verghese Kurian, the father of India's White Revolution, totally transformed the dairy industry, empowered so many farmers.
His story is incredible. Shows how ethical leadership can drive both social and the economic progress. And there's M.S. Menathan, the architect of the Green Revolution, helped achieve food security, alleviate poverty.
And Sam Petroda spearheaded the telecom revolution, connecting people in ways never imagined before. These are just a few, and our sources point to the common threads: integrity, a strong sense of duty, commitment to social equality.
Those are the values that really make a difference, not just in achieving success, but in leaving a positive legacy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about these big figures. Our sources also highlight everyday ethical dilemmas we all face, like following social distancing guidelines during a pandemic. Seems small, but it reflects social responsibility, commitment to public health.
It's a reminder that ethics isn't just grand gestures, it's the choices we make daily. Those small acts add up to a more ethical, harmonious society.
For sure. Now, our sources shift to the role of family, society, educational institutions in shaping our ethical development. This is where those foundational values are instilled, where our moral compass gets calibrated.
It's like laying the groundwork for ethical decision-making throughout life. Our sources highlight family as the primary source of values, where we first learn right from wrong. Parents, siblings, grandparents, everyone plays a part.
They point out that this happens in different ways: parents acting as role models, telling stories with moral lessons, encouraging interaction with people from diverse backgrounds. It's creating an environment where kids see ethical behavior and internalize those values.
It reminds me of those bedtime stories my grandma used to tell, full of characters facing dilemmas, learning life lessons. Not just entertainment, it was shaping my sense of right and wrong.
Exactly. And our sources stress teaching kids respect for others, generosity, compassion, even a sense of responsibility through things like charity. It's instilling those core values that'll guide their interactions with the world.
But it's not just preaching, it's practice too, right? Giving kids chances to actually exercise those values. Our sources even talk about discipline, advocating for a balanced approach. Not too much pampering, but not overly harsh punishment either.
Right. Finding that middle ground, setting boundaries, guiding, but also letting kids make their own choices and learn from mistakes. Nurturing moral development without stifling their independence.
It's giving them the tools to navigate the world ethically, while also letting them find their values, their own sense of right and wrong. Now, beyond the family, our sources look at society's impact. They make this interesting distinction between pre-industrial and post-industrial societies, highlighting how values have shifted.
It's fascinating. In pre-industrial societies, life was often about close-knit communities. Big emphasis on shared values, traditions, cooperation. Families were usually joint families, multiple generations living together, fostering that sense of interconnectedness.
Sounds like a more collectivist way of life, the well-being of the group being most important. What about the economy?
It was often based on agriculture, traditional crafts. Less emphasis on material wealth, more on just surviving communal living. Life was simpler, slower, more connected to nature. Our sources suggest this fostered values like contentment, simplicity, harmony with nature.
Sounds idyllic, but then the Industrial Revolution happened and everything changed, right?
Exactly. Factories, mass production, urbanization, societies transformed. Individual achievement, material wealth, competition, those became much more important, leading to a more individualistic way of life.
And nuclear families became the norm. People moving to cities for work, living in smaller, more self-contained units. Technology boomed, life sped up, the focus shifted to efficiency, productivity.
And our sources suggest this shift also affected values. The constant pursuit of profit, material gain in a capitalist society, it can sometimes erode ethical considerations. Exploitation of workers, environmental damage, a decline in social cohesion. It's like we traded community and shared values for individual advancement and wealth.
A trade-off with both good and bad, right? More individual freedom, opportunities, but maybe less connection, belonging, a decline in those values that bind us together. It's about finding the balance, individual aspirations, and collective well-being.
Exactly. And that brings us to another big player, educational institutions. Schools, colleges have a huge opportunity to instill values, foster critical thinking, nurture ethical development in young people.
It's going beyond just knowledge and skills. It's about shaping character, preparing them to be responsible, ethical citizens. But our sources acknowledge there are challenges in the current system.
Oh, definitely. They point out that the overemphasis on rote learning, memorization, standardized tests, it often comes at the expense of character development, ethical reasoning. We're so focused on measuring academic achievement, we neglect ethical intelligence, social responsibility.
And that pressure to perform, it creates such a competitive, stressful environment, which might actually undermine ethical development. It's like the message becomes get ahead no matter what, instead of do the right thing even when it's hard.
Exactly that. And they also point out the pressure from parents and the institutions to push kids towards specific careers, often those seen as prestigious or lucrative, without considering what the kid actually likes, is good at.
Like trying to fit everyone in the same mold, instead of recognizing, nurturing their unique talents, passions. We need an education system that's more holistic, inclusive, one that values diversity, encourages exploration, helps students find their own path to a meaningful, ethical life.
Absolutely. And our sources give some practical suggestions. They emphasize instilling discipline, punctuality early on, having activities that foster generosity, compassion, like community service, integrating constitutional values into the curriculum at all levels.
Making ethics part of the whole experience, not just a separate subject. And they highlight developing scientific temper, encouraging critical thinking, curiosity, questioning assumptions, looking for evidence-based answers.
And they even suggest a happiness curriculum, helping students develop emotional intelligence, resilience, a sense of well-being.
I love that. Because happiness isn't just individual, it's a collective responsibility too. Teaching kids how to be happy also equips them to contribute to a happier society.
They also say we can learn from other countries' education systems, like the Nordic countries, known for their holistic approach, prioritizing the well-being of the whole child.
It's recognizing that education isn't just job prep, it's preparing for life, becoming well-rounded individuals who can contribute positively to society.
Exactly. And they stress teaching students how to accept failures, seeing them as chances to grow, learn, not as setbacks or personal flaws, building resilience, adaptability, a growth mindset, equipping them to face life's challenges with grace and determination.
And they encourage moving away from this overemphasis on engineering and medicine as the desirable careers, broadening perspectives, supporting students exploring a wider range of options, recognizing there are many paths to a fulfilling life, and success isn't just about academics or money.
And finally, they suggest using the mother tongue at the primary level, recognizing how important language is for cognitive development, cultural identity, a child's sense of belonging. Creating an inclusive environment that values diversity empowers kids to learn in a way that feels natural, authentic to them.
Okay, so we've explored how ethics works within us, between us, how it shapes societies. Now let's get into something really fundamental.
Happiness.
Happiness. What is it? How do we get it?
Our sources give some interesting insights, framing happiness within the context of ethics. They point out that many people link happiness to external things, possessions, career success, social status. But true happiness is deeper, more enduring.
It's not those fleeting pleasures, acquiring stuff, getting validation from outside. It's about cultivating inner contentment, well-being that doesn't depend on what's happening around you.
Our sources suggest it's a state of mind, an internal experience that comes from ethical living. They highlight both the positive and the negative reasons why happiness is so important. On the positive side, it boosts our well-being, peace of mind, improves health, resilience, makes us more productive, creative. But the lack of it can have serious consequences.
It's like when we're truly happy, we radiate that. It affects everyone around us. But unhappiness can lead to a disturbed mind, negativity, stress, anxiety. It impacts not just us, but how we interact with others. a downward spiral.
Right. So the question becomes, how do we cultivate lasting happiness, break free from negativity, and experience that deep, abiding joy? Our sources offer some practical, indeed profound suggestions, drawing on ancient philosophies, spiritual traditions.
This is where it gets really interesting. What pathways to happiness do they suggest?
Well, they start with gratitude. Taking time to appreciate the good things, no matter how small, it shifts our perspective, helps us be content, focusing on what we have, not dwelling on what we lack.
Shifting from scarcity to abundance, mindset-wise.
Exactly. They also highlight selfless service, helping others without expecting anything back. Like the Bhagavad Gita's idea of nishkam karma, doing things without attachment to outcomes or rewards.
Acting from pure intention, wanting to serve, not for personal gain. That's where real fulfillment comes from, knowing you're making a difference.
They also draw on Buddha's teachings, emphasizing the importance of finding an enlightened soul, a mentor, someone to guide you on the path to happiness, like having a wise, compassionate friend who helps you see things more clearly, offering support as you navigate life. They mention Veda Vyasa, too, who compiled the Mahabharata. He stressed charity, saying, doing good leads to merit, while causing harm leads to sin.
A reminder that our actions have consequences, not just for us, but for others too. By choosing to act ethically, we create positive ripples that go beyond our immediate circle.
And it's comforting to know that this idea of ethical living as a path to happiness is found in pretty much every major religion, spiritual tradition. It's a universal truth.
So it's not about rigid rules. It's about cultivating a way of being in the world that aligns with our deepest values, aspirations, recognizing our interconnectedness, understanding that true happiness comes from a life of purpose, meaning, and ethical integrity. Speaking of interconnectedness, let's talk about technology and innovation. Ethics is becoming increasingly important in this arena.
You're right. Technology is changing everything so fast, and we need to make sure these advancements are used responsibly for the benefit of humanity. Our sources point out that ethics in technology and innovation has become its own field of study because the impact is so huge.
It's like we're in uncharted territory, and we need a strong ethical compass to guide us. Our sources highlight some recent incidents where technology has been misused or has raised ethical concerns.
Yeah, like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, remember that? Personal data from millions of Facebook users was taken without their consent, then used to try to influence how they voted. Big questions about data privacy, the potential for manipulation.
And there are concerns about those tech giants. Google, Facebook, removing pro-government content, suppressing dissenting voices, could stifle free speech, limit access to information. It's a debate about their power, their influence, the need for more transparency and accountability.
For sure. And let's not forget automation, AI potentially taking over jobs, creating economic inequality. As technology gets more advanced, it's crucial that everyone benefits. We don't end up with a society where only a few have access to opportunities, resources.
We need to think about the consequences, work towards solutions that are fair, inclusive.
They also highlight concerns about gene editing technologies. Altering the human genome, it raises huge ethical questions. Genetic discrimination, designer babies, unintended consequences for future generations. We need to be cautious, wise, really understand the impact of these advancements.
Okay, so much to think about with the ethics of technology, but let's focus on AI specifically. Artificial intelligence. It's developing at an incredible rate. Fascinating, but also kind of unsettling, right? AI systems are getting so sophisticated, making decisions, even mimicking human creativity.
And our sources stress that AI, just like humans, needs ethical guidance. We can't just unleash these powerful technologies without thinking about what could happen. They need to be designed, used in a way that's fair, unbiased, accountable.
So it's not just about what AI can do, it's about making sure it's used in a way that aligns with our values, serves humanity's best interests.
Exactly. And our sources point out that AI can inherit biases from the data it learns from. Like, if an AI used for hiring is trained on data that shows a preference for men, it might unintentionally discriminate against women.
That's scary. It's like our own biases get baked into the tech, potentially making inequality worse, even creating new forms of discrimination.
And that's why they emphasize addressing these biases, making sure AI is designed and used fairly, equitably, inclusively, making sure it benefits all of humanity.
So we need to be proactive, not just reacting to problems when they pop up, but anticipating ethical challenges, building safeguards into how AI is designed, implemented.
Absolutely. And our sources outline some key pillars of ethical AI: fairness, security, privacy, accountability. Fairness means AI treats everyone equally, no matter their race, gender, religion, anything like that. Security means protecting the systems from cyber attacks, manipulation that could mess them up or cause harm.
And privacy's huge EE, right? AI systems often collect so much personal data. We have to make sure that data is handled responsibly, ethically, respecting people's privacy, protecting it from misuse.
Exactly. And accountability is crucial. Having ways to monitor these systems, identify biases, address any negative consequences.
Like we need checks and balances for AI, just like for governments, other powerful institutions.
And they give practical recommendations. Set clear goals for fairness, inclusion, use diverse data sets, do rigorous testing, and stay updated on the latest research best practices.
Recognizing it's a fast-moving field, we need to be constantly learning, adapting to make sure AI is used ethically, responsibly.
And the human element's important too. They highlight involving ethicists, social scientists, and AI development, making sure we think about the human impact.
Remembering that technology should serve us, not the other way around. We need humility, recognizing both the potential benefits and the risks. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about ethics in the media.
The media is so powerful. It shapes public opinion, influences perceptions, holds those in power accountable. Our sources emphasize that journalists, media organizations, they have a responsibility to uphold integrity, accuracy, impartiality in their reporting, making sure the information they share is truthful, balanced, free from bias, manipulation.
It's about serving the public, giving people the info they need to make informed decisions, acting as a watchdog, holding the powerful accountable. But our sources acknowledge that the media can sometimes stray from these ethical principles, potentially harming individuals, society as a whole.
Right. They point out that the pressure to make money, get viewers, compete, it can sometimes lead to ethical compromises. Sensationalizing news, focusing on the negative, spreading misinformation or fake news, even taking bribes for favorable coverage.
Those are serious breaches. They can erode public trust, damage reputations, even incite violence. Ethical conduct is essential for maintaining the integrity of journalism, and our sources look specifically at the media's role in fighting corruption, highlighting its watchdog function.
Corruption's a huge issue in so many societies. It undermines trust, hinders development, perpetuates inequality. A free and independent media can play a huge role in preventing, monitoring, and controlling corruption, investigating, reporting on corrupt practices, educating the public, encouraging citizens to demand accountability.
It's about giving people the power to fight corruption, hold those in power responsible. But just like any power, the media itself needs to be held accountable. Their own reporting has to be accurate, fair, unbiased.
Absolutely, and our sources give recommendations. Establish clear ethical guidelines, enforce them consistently, develop self-regulating mechanisms, collaborate with the government to promote transparency, accountability.
It's creating a system where the media can be a watchdog, but is also held to high ethical standards.
Mhm.
Now, let's zoom in on the individuals doing this work, talk about journalistic ethics.